The last text I ever thought I'd read from her was 3 words. Don't worry, babe. It was sent to a number I didn't know at 2:13 a.m., 71 minutes after the man she'd kissed goodbye on the kitchen counter left our apartment. That sentence didn't start the end of us. It was just the polite punctuation on something that had been unraveling for months. What it did was make all the little suspicions, the missing receipts, the late-night excuses, snap into a single clean, brutal picture. She had been lying in a million boring ways for a year, and I had been a willing, smiling mark. I don't know if you want a tidy confession or a manual on how to fall apart slowly. I'm giving you the mess because messy was the point. We met at a hackathon 2 years earlier. She laughed at my bad jokes, offered me coffee when I forgot to eat, and somehow convinced my introverted tech brain that we were a better operating system than me. I downsized my life, not because she asked me to explicitly, but because it was easier than arguing. I gave up a spare room I used for late-night coding and made it her yoga space. I co-signed on things with a flimsy faith that us made risk smaller. We moved into a 1-bedroom that she decorated in colors I didn't have opinions about. I fell in love like an idiot, the way you fall into a pothole you don't see because someone pointed at a sunset with you and said, "Remember this." For a long time she was exactly the kind of person my family liked. Smart, tidy, funny in that slightly cultured way that suggested she read novels and could cook dinner for 50. She told my mom she loved a good garden. She liked the ritual of us. She asked for the kind of photos I thought meant permanence. She was tender, and she was also excellent at the kind of small, plausible omissions that look a lot like safety until they cost you everything. The first red flag was a receipt I found crumpled in the pocket of a jacket I washed by accident. $482 at Avery's Lounge, a place she claimed she'd never been to because she hates crowded bars. When I asked, she said it was a work thing with names that didn't match anyone on LinkedIn and a story that sounded like a drunk person reciting a script. I let it go. The next was a series of nights where she'd come home smelling like a different cologne and laugh, in a way that didn't match any laugh she'd ever had with me. There were messages I glimpsed on the kitchen table about dinner plans that didn't match the same dinner she promised me. You start to catalog violence by tiny, benign things when you can't conceive of the larger one. You tell yourself you're being paranoid because your choices were to either look or sleep comfortably. I chose sleep, and that was part of the problem. The night I should have left my keys on the counter and walked out was the night she took our dog. We were eating cold pizza, watching a show I pretended to like. She said she had to go to a friend's emergency, a phrase she used like an umbrella. I remember feeling a knot tighten but rationalizing it into a checklist: leash, keys, dog food, water. She kissed my forehead and said, "I'll be back before you finish the episode." She wasn't back by morning. The dog was in the passenger seat of the man who'd kissed her on the counter. He drove off with her calling shots on the phone, and my dog asleep like he'd been promised a party. I called and texted until the battery died. My agitation turned to obsession. I rifled through the junk drawer and found the kind of evidence you only see in movies. A Starbucks receipt, a hotel keycard with a name that wasn't hers, photographs on a camera she swore she'd lost months ago. In one of them she had her arms slung around a man named Daniel, his head turned toward the camera, smiling like they'd rehearsed the exact expression in advance. My heart did something a surgeon might call rupture. Not a dramatic explosion, but a slow, cold shutdown that made everything else feel muffled. I confronted her in the kitchen, because confrontation in the kitchen is cinematic and also exhausting. She looked at the photos and did something I wasn't prepared for. She laughed. Not a nervous laugh, not a sad laugh, but a small, deliberate laugh designed to convince me I was the one being ridiculous. "Those are old," she said. "We were just friends. You're inventing things. When you love someone, you invent kindnesses for them. You invent reasons to believe." I wanted to believe. I asked her if she was sleeping with him. She shrugged, like the question was impolite. This is where she started to escalate. Lies, it turns out, are easier to say than to stop saying. Every time I pushed, she turned the pressure back on me. "You're spiraling," she told me. "You're paranoid. I work hard. I'm tired. If you can't trust me, that's a you problem." She was very good at making everything about my shortcomings. The way she weaponized my empathy felt like something I'd been trained to tolerate. She knew exactly where my line was and how slowly to move it, so I still thought I was choosing to cross it. The real twist, the one that cost me my car, a big chunk of my savings, and the feeling that anyone would ever believe me, was a piece of paper tucked into a folder labeled, "Just in case," that I found because she left it under our couch while she packed. She left a lot of things: our coffee maker, my favorite mug, a stack of shared mail. She didn't leave that folder intentionally. She left it because she was in a hurry and thought I wouldn't look. It had forms. Durable power of attorney. Notarized signatures. I had signed some stupid piece of paper a few months before when I was being dramatic about an outpatient procedure. I remember it now. She made me laugh before I went under. She said, "If anything happens, this will make things easier." And I signed it because it felt romantic and practical in a hospice movie way. The thing was, she hadn't made it a romantic courtesy. She'd made it a weapon. With that document, she had legally transferred authority to move money, change accounts, and to make decisions on my behalf. She'd used it like a key. In 36 hours, $32,000 were gone. The joint car title was signed over in red pen so fast that you could still smell the coffee from the owner of the notary. Our dog, whose microchip was registered to me, was now legally hers because she had switched the registration while visiting a friend at the vet. She didn't leave me with an explanation. She left me with a carefully curated narrative that I had freaked out and drunk texted, and something about my mental health. Rhetoric that feels terrible to admit because I wasn't fragile, not really, but she turned my inability to produce clean rationality into a kind of evidence against me. The first real physical consequence was the repo on my car. I found the tow notice taped to the mailbox like a petty insult. The bank had frozen my accounts because of suspected fraudulent activity. When I called the bank, they were devastatingly efficient and devastatingly neutral. "Under the documents you signed over, Miss Larkin has authority to manage these accounts," the woman told me on the phone. "We cannot comment further without written consent." The neutral efficiency of bureaucracy is what defeats you when you're emotionally naked. It's like being eaten by moss. I drove to where she was staying and found my dog asleep on a blanket in the passenger seat of a BMW, with a man who smirked when I asked for her. "Mia's upstairs," he said. "You should leave before you embarrass yourself." He was Daniel. He had the blunt, easy arrogance of someone who knew how to get what he wanted and didn't always need to hide the fact that he enjoyed it. I shouldn't have gone upstairs. I went upstairs. There was a moment in the hall where the light was too bright and I wanted to run. Instead, I knocked. She opened the door with some kind of plan on her face, the sort of face that says, "I expected you to react like this. We need to talk," I said. "Who is he?" She smiled like I'd asked an adorable question. "He is Daniel. He's a friend. You know how you worry." The friend word was something she used to make me kneel. I asked about the money. She said she'd borrowed from joint savings because we were strapped and that she would pay it back. She had already taken the car. She had already changed the microchip registration. "If you keep going like this," she said in a voice that tried on compassion and landed on cruelty, "you're going to lose everything." She said it like a prophecy and then like a plan. I spent the next week trying to be reasonable. I recorded conversations, because you think that will make you sane in the eyes of other people. I saved emails. I printed bank statements. I sent a polite, angry email to my employer about the theft. I thought my company would care. Instead, my email disappeared into HR purgatory, and then into a file labeled mediation. She countered my attempts by doing something that felt like a new level of betrayal. She told our friends a version of the story in which I had been manipulative and volatile. She sent a series of curated screenshots to my brother where she had cropped out context and left only my aggressive language. In one photo, she had staged a bruise on her arm and taken a selfie with a face like, "See what he does." I didn't hit her. I'd never so much as thrown a glass in anger. She knew a thing about social media strategy that I didn't. Make people see a narrative, and they'll take the easy side. Friends texted me, empathetic at first, then oddly distant. A few wrote that if Mia says X, we believe X. People don't want to be wrong about their judgment of someone they like. You don't learn that without losing something. The second physical cost was my job. HR called me in for unprofessional conduct after someone, I never found out who, forwarded a screenshot of an email I had sent the night I found out. It was raw. I was not my best version. I lost my client-facing role while an investigation was the polite cover. Someone required no contact, and someone else required a temporary suspension. I remember sitting on the steps outside our building with a vape in my hand, and a collective quiet around me like a church bell tolling at irregular intervals. They paid me 2 weeks severance. They were very polite. Losing the job was a cascading thing. I couldn't pay the monthly minimum on a home equity loan we shared because the accounts were frozen in legal purgatory. The landlord slid a notice under the door like a merciful, indifferent judge. I missed a payment and then two. We were audited in a way I didn't know existed. Everything I'd thought of as private turned into paperwork. I signed forms with shaky pens and listened to a lawyer's voice I was certain was bored. The legal fees began to look like a second mortgage. There was a stretch where my life reduced to the rhythm of paying people because I had less than nothing left in the only currency I valued anymore. The belief that I was a homeowner and someone relied on me. The third thing she took was my dog. She had filed a claim with the microchip company and the vet, claiming I had abandoned him. The registrar didn't want to get involved in human fights, and neither did the vet. They are not built for moral courage, they are built for forms. My dog stayed with her. She posted videos of him sleeping at Daniel's feet with the caption, "He's so much happier." People liked the videos. People left supportive comments. My sister called me and said she didn't know what to think anymore because Mia posted something that seemed very convincing. I wanted to scream until my vocal cords gave up. I drove to the county clerk's office and looked for paperwork that would allow me to claim him back. There was nothing. The durable power of attorney gave her the legal authority to make the kind of choices that don't always push a police officer's buttons, to change registrations, to divert mail, to call herself the custodian of an animal. There is a dimension of cruelty to bureaucracy that isn't spectacular enough for a true crime doc. It's like watching a machine eat you slowly. I did what people do. I tried to expose her. I printed her messages. I went to her friends. I begged them to see the patterns. Some of them were frank and didn't care. Some called me needy. A few actually started to piece things together and privately told me they were disturbed. I shouldered their pity like a badge because at least it meant I was still recognized. What finally tipped the scales, and the thing that made me cross a line I swore I never would, was finding a video she made for herself. It was hidden under a folder on an old, stupid flash drive she left plugged into the TV. It wasn't a bedroom video, not the kind you hear other people complain about. It was more chilling. She was speaking into the camera, a little tipsy, a little radiant like a villain in a redemption film. "We just have to get him to sign the POA," she said, giggling like someone who'd found an exploit. "Then we take the car, the account, and the dog. He'll be fine, he always is. He'll get work again. He has family. It's not like we're killing him." She laughed into the pillow. It was her admittance, a self-satisfied little documentary about the plan she had executed. In the next clip she was with Daniel and a man named Tyler, my friend Tyler who had told me he supported me when I was fired. They toasted with cheap wine and joked about their upgrade. The video was their private celebration. Seeing them laugh like that, like they had not once thought about the way my chest felt when the car was towed, made me sick. I uploaded the video to a cloud and saved it in 3 drives. I thought the video would save me. Instead it became the paper knife that cut everything into the shape she wanted. She responded to the eventual public exposure by playing martyr. She accused me of creating a fake recording, of kidnapping. She even filed a police report one late night claiming I had come to her place drunk and threatened her. Someone took a photo of my car outside Daniel's building and captioned it, "Stalker Alert." My social media filled with messages that alternated between "get help" and "I'm so sorry." The cops were not a deus ex machina. They were empathetic in the soft way of people who don't want to get involved unless there's clear evidence for a crime. They were not eager to believe a man who had a history of frantic texts and angry emails when the woman he accused had a neat binder of proof that painted him as irrational. The world in that month had a scale where his version of events required legal proof, and hers required nothing more than a persuasive performance. I hired a private investigator with the last of my cash. He found hotel records, receipts, and messages. He found that she had spent nights with Daniel in hotels across state lines. He found plane tickets she booked in my name, because she could, and the PI turned over piles of receipts that looked like confetti in a pile, massages, dinners, cab rides. He also found something else, A string of small, suspicious cash deposits into her account that matched a pattern of someone laundering money through petty vendors. The PI's invoice alone almost bankrupted me. We took the evidence to the DA because I thought money laundering would be a hook serious enough for prosecutors. They were polite, then perfunctory. They told me I had a civil remedy and that criminal charges might be difficult. It was like hearing "we're sorry" read from a script while someone picked my pockets. When I sent all of the evidence to my company's legal team, hoping that putting everything on the table would clear my name, they finally responded in a way that mattered. Due to the allegations, and pending our independent investigation, we are suspending you. It felt theatrical and final. When you lose everything the way I did, you learn to calculate loss like a ledger. 30 twak in joint savings, $7 and K in legal fees, a car worth 14 gone, a dog who used to sleep on my chest, a job that paid my rent, friends who stopped answering, 2 apartments away from my mother. I could write $signs all over my chest. They become maps. The person who didn't give up was Mia. If anything, she doubled down. She posted new pictures with Daniel, them in front of a skyline, a soft boomerang of them toasting wine, her head nudged toward his shoulder with the kind of small intimacy that aches in photographs. She was doing what my mind couldn't do. She was moving on. She moved on publicly because she wanted everyone to know she was already over me. When I tried to go to her house and get the dog back, there was a restraining order waiting for me because of harassment. It felt surreal. I couldn't even get my dog back without being labeled a criminal. That was when I stopped worrying about appearances. I broke into their lives in the only way I had left. I started telling the truth loudly. I printed the video and the receipts and the notarized POA. I sent them to friends, to the local newspapers, to a subforum of people who had been through similar things. I posted the images of them laughing on a public message board with the caption, "This is the woman who stole our life." The internet is a blast furnace for vengeance. Some people called me brave. Others said I'd stooped to their level. Daniel posted a story with a stern caption about someone trying to ruin good people. There were threats. There were messages from strangers who wanted me to press things further. I hired a lawyer for one last desperate motion, to challenge the power of attorney on grounds of fraud. He said the law is dry but not impermeable. If I could prove she had used the document in bad faith, a court could unwind some transactions. Trials are long. Evidence piles like slow-moving glaciers. When the DA finally reviewed the file, it was because of an unrelated audit at the hotel chain where she'd been staying. A managerial accountant found the pattern of comped rooms that were actually being paid in secret and flagged suspicious corporate card use. The audit opened a closet door I didn't know existed. The hotel's compliance department reached out to the DA, not to me, with ledgers that matched the pattern my PI had found. The DA reopened discussions. That was the only time I felt like the world might be uneven, but not entirely crooked. They interviewed the hotel staff. A maid remembered the way they had laughed, and the name Daniel scrawled on a napkin. An attendant remembered the man with a BMW calling the room ours, with a voice that had no room left for a future. The DA convened a hearing. But even then, victory was Pyrrhic. The DA could only prosecute so much. She was charged with fraud relating to the transfer of funds and a misdemeanor for false statements. She pled down to a lighter sentence, community service and restitution to the extent the court could secure it. The restitution was a drip compared to the flood I'd lost. She was ordered to return the car and pay back a part of the money, but in between the day I got the court victory and the day the money trickled back, my landlord had evicted me. My car had been sold at an auction for less than market value, and the dog had been adopted by Daniel's sister, who signed an affidavit saying he'd been abandoned. The court's judgment felt antiseptic. It said guilty of X, restitution of Y. It did not return late nights, or the months I sat on the stairs wondering why I had been the only person left who thought we were a team. It did not make phone calls come back to me. The rest of the world had moved on with its small, comfortable certainties. Some of my friends texted a "how are you?" that read like something they wanted to get past quickly. I got a small check in the mail after a year and used most of it to claw back my car, which had been wrecked in an accident that Daniel could have prevented. A court order made him sign some documents. He eventually left town with a new girlfriend and a lesser laugh. Mia served a few months of community service and had to take an anger management class, she openly mocked in a video I saw months later. She had a job at a marketing firm and a relationship that looked like its own social media play. She had a life I could summarize in captions. The final cost, which I still wake to sometimes, was intangible and slow, the way trust feels like a physical object you can't get back once it's been pawned. I lost my belief that most people will default to truth if given time. I lost the naive idea that love equals safety. I lost faith in my own judgment for a while. I stopped sleeping through the night without waking and rehearsing ways to be smarter, to be less gullible, to build walls instead of a home. There's a moment people don't talk about when relationships end in cruelty. The grief isn't all for the person you loved. A huge part of the mourning is for the person you thought you were, generous, trusting, open, and the way that person dies and is replaced by someone who learns to be meaner in order to survive. I won't pretend I was saintly. I was selfish sometimes. I was lazy in my trust. But I was honest about the parts of the story that made me look broken, because you can't fix a record with fingerprints smeared across it. The ending isn't cinematic. There is no grand public exposure where everyone nods and apologizes. The ending is a series of small, quiet recoveries. I got a job 3 months later at a startup where no one knew my private life. I learned how to put a stronger lock on bank accounts and to hold close the boxes of evidence for my pets and relationships. I eventually got a new dog, a rescue that was suspicious of hands at first, the way I was suspicious of everyone. He is hypervigilant about my mood. He sleeps on my chest differently, not the old weight of a familiar thing, but a new, fresh smallness that trusts at its own pace. I dated again badly at first. I made choices because I was scared of being alone instead of because I wanted someone. It took a long time to notice the difference. A friend once asked me if I hated Mia. The honest answer is complicated. There is anger, a steady cold heat that wakes me sometimes. There is also a strange sort of pity, not for her exactly, but for the architecture of a person who can make constellations out of other people's lives and not notice the scorched earth in their wake. She had wanted an upgrade and took the elevator shaft instead of the stairs. She kept riding after the rope frayed. The worst part is the skill. She is not evil in a comic book way. She is opportunistic and self-protective, and that makes her frightening because it's believable. She had a motive: thrill, security, greed, whatever combination turns people into thieves. She didn't stop because I asked her to. She didn't stop because she loved me. She stopped because some combination of arrogance and market forces made it simpler to go on. If you want the final crucible, here it is. One winter evening, about 18 months later, I saw her in a coffee shop. She was alone, stirring a latte with an expression that looked like regret, but I have seen actors with that face. She looked up, our eyes met, and a part of my body, the animal part that never forgets safety, clenched. She smiled in that way people smile to people they once used, and then moved on from. I wanted to say 100 things. Apology, accusation wrapped in apology. Instead, I picked up my coffee and walked the other way. That walk felt like an achievement. I didn't get to keep everything. I couldn't stop the leak of money and time and reputation. I had no cinematic victory. What I have is a ledger of losses and the slow rebuilding of a life that doesn't require the permission of people like her to continue. The thing that surprised me in the end is that the cruelty made me more careful, not bitter. I learned to ask for transparency in ways I hadn't asked before. I learned to demand proof and to be willing to walk away if it didn't add up. And I learned that some people will ruin you because you are an available thing. The part that I don't forgive is the smallness of it all, that she could be charming and then efficient about the way she took things. She knew exactly what to take and exactly how to make you feel like the failure in the story. She had the motive, the means, and she used both with the calmness of someone who had practiced. I still wake sometimes and reach out in a small, pathetic way, not to her, but to the memory of the man I used to be. I try to teach him now to be kinder to himself. I don't want to be broken into a better person by anyone's cruelty anymore. If this story is a warning, it's a practical one. Pay attention when someone makes your generosity a routine, and never, ever sign away the keys to your life because it feels like romance.